This is video 1 of The Will to Power by Friedrich Nietzsche. Nihilism is at our door, whence comes this most gruesome of all guests to us. To begin with, it is a mistake to point to social evils, physiological degeneration, or even to corruption as a cause of nihilism. This is the most straightforward and most sympathetic age that ever was. Evil, whether spiritual, physical, or intellectual, is in itself quite unable to introduce nihilism, i.e., the absolute repudiation of worth, purpose, and desirability. These evils allow of yet other and quite different explanations, but there is one very different explanation of the phenomena. Nihilism harbors in the heart of Christian morals. At the time he wrote this in the 1800s, the state controlled the society and the country, and he believed that they created lies to control the masses, and we went through that in the introduction. The downfall of Christianity through its morality, which is insuperable, which finally turns against the Christian God himself, the sense of truth, highly developed through Christianity, ultimately revolts against the falsehood and fictitiousness of all Christian interpretations of the world and its history. The recoil stroke of God is truth in the fanatical belief is all is false Buddhism of action. Doubt in morality is the decisive factor, the downfall of the moral interpretation of the universe, which loses its reason once it has tried to take flight to a beyond, meets its end in nihilism. Nothing has any purpose. The inconsistency of one explanation of the world, to which men have devoted untold energy, gives the rise to the suspicion that all explanations may perhaps be false. The Buddhist feature, a yearning for non-entity, developed at the back, is why nihilism in its case means only morality, not overcome existence, is regarded as punishment and conceived as an error. Error is thus held to be punishment, a moral valuation. Philosophical attempts to overcome the moral God, the vanquishing of popular ideals, the wizard, the saint, the bard, antagonism of true and beautiful and good, against purposelessness on the one hand, against moral valuations on the other. How far has all science and philosophy been cultivated under the influence of moral judgments? And have we not gotten the additional factor, the enmity of science, into the bargain, or the prejudices against science? Nihilistic consequences of present natural science, along with its attempts to escape into a beyond, out of its practice there finally arises a certain self-annihilation, an antagonistic attitude towards itself, a sort of anti-scientificality. Since Copernicus, man has been rolling away from the center towards X. What does nihilism mean? The highest values are losing their value. There is no born. There is no answer to the question, to what purpose? Through nihilism is the conviction that life is absurd. In the light of the highest values already discovered, it also includes the view that we have not the smallest right to assume the existence of transcendental objects or things in themselves, which would be either divine or morally incarnate. What advantages did the Christian hypothesis of morality offer? It bestowed an intrinsic value upon men which contrasted with their apparent insignificance and subordination to chance in the eternal flux of becoming and perishing. It served the purpose of God's advocates inasmuch as it granted the world a certain perfection despite its sorrow and evil. It also granted the world that proverbial freedom. Evil seemed full of meaning. It assumed that man could have a knowledge of absolute values, and thus granted him adequate perception for the most important things. It prevented man from despising himself as man, from turning against life, and from being driven to despair by knowledge. It was a self-preservation measure. In short, morality was the great antidote against practical and theoretical nihilism. But among the forces reared by morality, there was truthfulness. This, in the end, turns against morality, exposes the teleology of the latter, its interestedness, and now the recognition of this lie so long incorporated, from which we despaired over freeing ourselves, acts just like a stimulus. Insofar as we believe in morality, we condemn existence. The consequence of nihilism, disbelief in all values as a result of the moral valuation, we have grown to dislike egotism, even though we have realized the impossibility of altruism. We have grown to dislike what is most necessary, although we have recognized the impossibility of the intellectual freedom. We perceive that we do not reach the sphere in which we have set our values. At the same time, those of other spheres in which we live have not thereby gained one iota in value. On the contrary, we are tired because we have lost the main incentive to live, all in vain. And with that, I'll stop.